It's part 3 of our Florida Panthers season preview. Today we'll be discussing whether Barkov will be a Selke finalist or even win it and score 40 goals, which blue liner will lead the team in points, and where will the Florida Panthers finish, and who will win Lord Stanley's Cup.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this special edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're at your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. And today's episode is brought to you by the Sleeper app. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONAHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. So, Cats fans, I really hope that you guys are enjoying the amount of content that is coming into your podcast feed and YouTube feed. By the way, we are about 10 subscribers away from 600 on YouTube, and make sure to go there and subscribe if you want to see more than just the podcast. If you want to see some YouTube shorts on quick game breakdowns and media availabilities from the Florida Panthers, which you can watch in full, you make sure to subscribe to the Locked On Florida Panthers YouTube page, and you'll see all of that there on that feed. It won't be available on the audio version of the show, but tomorrow's edition of the show, before we get into today's, we will be previewing the Florida Panthers versus Minnesota Wild game from XL Energy Center in St. Paul, the first one of 82 as we prepare for a new season. But for today's show, it's part 3 and our final part of this Florida Panthers season preview, and very thankful once again for Jacob Winans and Nick Fairbanks, my guest hosts every single week on Wednesdays and Fridays, that they were able to come on and do this long episode split into 3 parts. But let's go right into the final part of this episode as we preview the Florida Panthers season. Will Barkov win the Selke, and will he score 40 goals? So let's start with Jacob on this one.
I'm going to say yes and no. And my no is going to be to the Selke, and my yes is going to be to 40 goals. I think this is the year that Barkov finally eclipses 40. I think he's due for a healthy season, which preseason did not give me any kind of hope or assurance with that, given that he got sick. But my hope is that his yearly illness, which he always seems to get sick with something at least once a year, my hope is that his yearly illness was out of the way in preseason this time. So he will be healthy the entire season. That's what I'm putting out there. And I think this is the year he tops 40 goals, because the Panthers are going to need it. We don't have as many of the electric complementary scorers. We're starting with some injuries on the blue line from guys who produce offensively from the blue line. So the forwards are going to have to pick up the offensive slack. The Panthers routinely are one of the highest scoring defensive teams in the NHL. This year, we on paper, we don't have that right now. So we can't afford the slow start from Barkov that we had last season and a couple other years where I believe there's one year he didn't score a goal till like the 11th game of the season or something. And last year he struggled early on. We can't have that. The team can't afford it. The forwards are going to have to produce. It starts with him. And I think this is the year where he really takes control of that. And I think he's going to top 40 goals. And my bold prediction for Barkov, I think he'll be a Selke finalist for sure. The Patrice Bergeron elephant is now out of the room. So I think he'll be a Selke finalist. But my bold prediction is that he actually leads the Panthers in scoring this year. I think Barkov is the one who goes over 100 points. I think Barkov will be a Hart finalist. And I think he's going to top 40 goals.
Nice prediction. I was actually going to ask, if he's going to be a Selke finalist, who do you have winning the Selke?
Winning the Selke this year, I think That's tough. My pick is kind of a sleeper pick, actually. Maybe not to everyone, but I think the New Jersey Devils are going to be a really, really good team this year. I think Nico Hischier is going to be a monster defensively. I think if that team has success in the standings, it'll bring some attention to his game, and I think Nico Hischier is my pick for the Selke. I still think Barkov is a better defensive forward. I just think Nico Hischier won't have as much of the pressure on some of the best lines. I think his defensive numbers might look really good, and that team might look really good. So I'm going to go Nico Hischier.
Awesome pick. I just hope that he doesn't do anything during the face-off against Barkov this season.
Yeah, it pains me to pick him as the Selke winner because last year he accidentally on purpose took out Barkov's knee. Not calling him a dirty player. I think I think it was unfortunate. It's hockey. I don't blame him for it, but yeah.
So I will say that Barkov, this is tough for me. I think he'll be a finalist too. I think with Bergeron out of the way, it does make it easier. But I still think there's a certain player on the West whose team is back on the rise right now and actually played Edmonton very well and very effectively, and that's Anze Kopitar. Okay. I think he'll win another Selke before he leaves, and I think it'll be this year. But with Barkov, I just hope whatever was going on last season, whether it was his health, other issues going on outside of the rink, are kind of put to rest, and he doesn't have to really worry about that anymore. He can just focus on hockey and focus on being his best version of himself, that he will lead the team in scoring, and I do like that prediction. I think he can put up over 110 points, and if it's going to be 40 goals, so be it. But I think the one reason why he could do that, he'll have a line the whole season. He'll have Verhaeghe and hopefully Rodriguez the whole season. Will be consistent where he doesn't have to keep swapping out a winger every other game, or he's got to take on extra responsibilities just because the team is not as deep as it used to be. So Selke, I'm going to give it to Anze Kopitar, but it's going to be really close. I just think that probably the success of Los Angeles Kings is probably going to surpass the Panthers this season.
Interesting, no Mark Stone pick yet between the two of us for Selke.
I'm doing that on purpose.
I figured.
Yeah. So there's so many worthy candidates. I mean, you said Nico Hischier, Anze Kopitar, who's just like Barkov, a Lady Byng winner as well. There's also Mitch Marner as well, but it's a little harder for wingers to get into the conversation of winning the actual award. There's Sean Couturier of the Philadelphia Flyers, but I don't think they're going to be a great team this year. So that's going to be a little harder as well for him to make a case.
Can't sleep on Sid either.
Say again?
Can't sleep on Sid either. He's also definitely up there defensively as a center.
No doubt. And someone like Elias Lindholm as well. There's one as well, yep. Which could Calgary have a bounce back this season, especially because Elias Lindholm is up for a contract as well. But I think there's a possibility that Barkov could win it. I wrote an article a few weeks ago saying that he could be that next standard as far as defensive forwards. And the fact that something that Jacob and I spoke about during a Winans Wednesday edition of the show is that they're going to rely on their forward groups to play more of the defensive responsible game, to take care of the blue liners. And I think that top line, especially when you add an Evan Rodriguez there, I think that's really going to be a very impactful defensive forward group for the Florida Panthers. So I think that Barkov very well could win the Selke this year. 40 goals, I'm going to say yes if healthy, but it's all going to be dependent on health. So I'm going to say yes to both Selke and 40 goals for the Florida Panthers. We're going to pause this conversation between me and my fellow guest host, Jacob Winans, and Nick Fairbanks for this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast to tell you guys all about Sleeper. And the NHL season is finally here. Will the Florida Panthers have the season we've been yearning for? I absolutely love the NHL. I know you do too. And that's why I want to tell you all about the Sleeper app. The Sleeper app is the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, and it's my go-to for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy. The NHL has never been more exciting than it is now, with studs like Connor McDavid, Alexander Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, Cale Makar, and even Florida Panthers like Matthew Tkachuk and Aleksander Barkov. Just pick more or less on stats for these stars on stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. You heard me, Panther fans. 100 times a payout on Sleeper. So start paying attention and get your picks right, and you could win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for detail. This episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. And do you ever feel like your brain is getting in your way? Sometimes balancing a job, a side hustle, being out with friends, and having a social life, sometimes it can get in your own way. And then sometimes it can be overstimulating. Like, you know what you should do, what's good for you, but you just can't do it. Therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNHL today to get 10% off your first month. Once again, visit betterhelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNHL. All right, next one. Which blue liner will lead the team in points? And this was before we found out the LTIR status of Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad. I wrote, and like I said, I wrote an article with David Dwork about predicting who will lead the team in points, but this was 2 weeks ago. At the time, I said Oliver Ekman-Larsson, but I'm changing it. I'm putting it back to Money Montour to lead the team in points, assuming that he's going to come back earlier. So I think he's going to build. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near 73 that he had last season, but I'm going to put Brandon Montour as the leader for most points. But from the blue line with the Florida Panthers. What says you guys? We'll start with Jacob.
I'm going to go Brandon Montour as well. I don't think it'll be over 70, given that he is going to miss some time, but I would not be shocked to see him top 50. He's in a contract year. He wants to prove that he's healthy. He's going to immediately get that power play one status back. And then also, he's really flourished under Paul Maurice, who just kind of lets him play his game. Last season, he called him a rover. He's a defenseman, but he doesn't necessarily stay back. He jumps into the play. He's free to jump up with the forwards, and he's so fast. So good on his skates that he can get back, and he doesn't really abandon defense for offense. So I think he'll top 50, assuming he doesn't miss more than, say, 15 games or so, which we'll see what that ends up looking like. But 50 points seems reasonable. I think Ekblad, when he gets back, he'll probably get around the 30 range, given that he's going to miss some significant time. I think he'll get to the 30-ish range. Ekman-Larsson being the power play one quarterback for a while. I think he probably gets into the 30s or 40s. And then I wouldn't sleep on Gus Forsling either. I think he'll carry some more offensive responsibility to start the year. He may have a chance to break out offensively, but for me, it's going to be Montour. It's his job to lose, getting those offensive opportunities as a defenseman.
So I want to update you guys. Just so for later in the season, when people blame the Pittsburgh Penguins for missing the playoffs and the Florida Panthers not deserving to be in, Blackhawks beat the Pittsburgh Penguins 4-2 tonight.
4 unanswered goals, and Connor
How
Bedard
about that?
He got his first NHL point on a secondary assist. Yep.
How about that?
So I want to bookmark this time for next April because I want to hear it again. And I want those terrible takes to be taken again. Anyways, I'm going to get off my soapbox there. Jake, you took my guy. I wanted to go with the contract buddy because we're going to have to decide between both of them. Gus Forsling, I think with every single year that he's played more games as a Panther, and that's not good. My picture fell down. Sorry about that. I'm going to take Gus Forsling just because he's upped his games every single year as a Panther, and he's also upped his points. And I think with this window right now, with him being with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I think he'll have more of an opportunity not only to shoot more, but also he'll have more of an opportunity to play a little bit more as well. So I think he'll definitely benefit from that. I could see him actually putting up over 50 points this year, especially with with the way that the team is going and with how much time he's going to be able to play.
Yeah, and Gus Forsling, a big jump in time on ice last from 2022 to 2023 with 21-13 to 23-26. And even when Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad come back, he's going to still have, in my opinion, he's going to still have those top minutes. Not going to get a lot of power play time, likely on power play 2. The only reason I would see him on power play 1 is injuries and all that stuff. Even though he can be a little bit careless with the puck, as well as far as giving it away, I'm hoping to see that more of taking care of the puck and breaking out of the zone a little bit better from Gus Forsling, but also can get in front of shots. Got 106 last year as well, but we're talking points here as well. I think with how incredible of a skater Gus Forsling is, definitely that possibility for him. Even though I'm still going to go with Brandon Montour as my pick due to the fact that there is that possibility of him returning earlier as well. We're going to take a pause of this conversation between myself and my guest host, Jacob Winans, and Nick Fairbanks to tell you all about Jase Medical. And the Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jase case is to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of our board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from our physicians on any treatment-related questions. Doctor created, doctor recommended. Don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jase handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy, medication, delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics from Jase Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Once again, get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics from Jase Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout. We have arrived at our last one of the night as we preview the season for the Florida Panthers, and we will go back to this to see whether we were right or not as far as our picks. And this is going to be a 2-parter as well. So let's go with our Stanley Cup playoff bracket, and while we fill out our bracket, we are going to tell the listeners where we have the Florida Panthers as far as points and finishing in the Atlantic Division. So let's start with Nick on this one.
All right. So as far as my actual bracket, I want to say, I'm going to say the top team overall in the East is going to be Toronto, followed by Tampa Bay, followed by Florida. And I'm going to throw this in there. I think Detroit makes it.
Whoa. All right.
So that I'll make that as far as the Atlantic goes. And then as far as the Metro goes, I'm going to take the Rangers. I'm going to take the Capitals getting back there. I will put the Isles in there just because I think their defense is just so smothering. And then obviously the Carolina Hurricanes. So those are my 8 in the East. So we are going to get another showdown between Florida and Tampa for round 1.
And Jacob, your East bracket.
That is interesting. I also believe that it will be Florida and Tampa in the first round. But for me, I think Tampa ends up the wild card this time around, and the Panthers are top 3 in the Atlantic. I think Tampa's going to struggle without Vasi, and I think they've lost a lot of depth. I've been a firm believer in this. the entire time that the Panthers have kind of taken over under Zito. I don't think the Panthers win a cup without going through Tampa. I don't know what it is. It feels to me like a Washington-Pittsburgh situation where just the Capitals could not win a cup until they had overcome beating Pittsburgh. So I think last year the Panthers not having to get through Tampa for some reason, I think the hockey gods just said, you cannot win a cup this year. You have to beat Tampa to win your cup. So I think the Panthers are going to get Tampa in the first round. We have to overcome that big brother to actually win a cup. So I'm going to go in no particular order. Panthers, Lightning. I've got the Maple Leafs and I've got the Sabres in the Atlantic. I think Boston misses. I think Ottawa is not ready, despite the fact that they really, really think they are. I've got Detroit missing. Definitely have Montreal missing. So it's Panthers, Lightning, Maple Leafs, and the Sabres are the new kid on the block in the Atlantic. For the Metro, I've got Carolina first in the Metro and first overall in the East. I've got New Jersey close behind them. I've got the Rangers getting in again. And I've got the Pittsburgh Penguins getting back into the playoffs this year. I think there's just too much talent on that team not to get in. So unfortunately for the Washington Capitals, that means they are going to miss the playoffs again narrowly. And I think it's time for them to start a rebuild. Begin a rebuild and just do whatever you can to at least keep one good line so Ovi can continue to chase the goal record. So that's my East. Those are my 8 in the East. In the West, I've got the Blackhawks. No, definitely not the Blackhawks.
I was about to say, what? Yo, I was going to say, Frank.
I thought that might get you guys. Just seeing if you're paying attention. I've got the Avalanche. I've got the Dallas Stars. Dallas Stars for me are the best team in the West. I've got Avalanche, Stars. I've got the Wild, and I've got the Jets out of the Central. And then out of the Pacific, I've got Calgary getting back in. New head coach. I think Jonathan Huberdeau bounced back. I think that's a team that's still got some good talent on that team. So I've got Calgary getting back in. Got Edmonton first in the Pacific. I have the Golden Knights and I have the LA Kings. I think Seattle overachieved last year and they will take a step back. So I've got Vegas, I've got LA, I've got Edmonton, and I've got Calgary in the Pacific. So for my overall prediction, winning the cup, it pains me to say this. I hate to say it. I've got Carolina winning it all. I've got them beating us in the Eastern Conference Final this year. I think they get over the hump. I think Carolina wins the cup this season. I think they do it over Dallas. That's my prediction.
Jacob, our Eastern Conference is identical.
How about that?
Slight changes so I'm going to say my order. Toronto first, Florida second, Tampa Bay third. Metro is Carolina, New Jersey, New York. Wildcard 1 will be Pittsburgh. I think Sidney Crosby is going to come in mad. I know they lost tonight, but I think they're going to be mad enough to the point that they're going to get back in. You're not going to see 2 years in a row of Sidney Crosby, of Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang missing in, and bringing in Erik Karlsson as well. Buffalo, you can't get any worse with goaltending than last year, in my opinion. And that team is fun. Once again, I said it yesterday with David. I'm going to say it again. They are fun to watch. They can score. They have depth as far as their forward group. Rasmus Dahlin just got an extension as well. And they're on a cheap contract with Owen Power. And we just mentioned Zach Benson earlier in the show about Calder as well. So it's definitely a great mix over there in Buffalo. Central, I got only 3 Central teams making it: Dallas, Minnesota, and Colorado in that order. Pacific, Edmonton, VGK, Seattle. I think that there's so much depth scoring that Seattle had last year. I think it's a credit to what Dave Haxtell has done out there. I know he didn't do so well in Philadelphia. I just think that the systems that he put in place there has really helped the Seattle Kraken really achieve to what they got. And Matty Beniers, I think, man, he's going to be a superstar in this league if he isn't one already. And just dependent if Shane Wright, even though he's starting in the AHL, Can he come back and be part of that mix? And wild cards, I got Calgary and the LA Kings in the mix. I don't think the Winnipeg Jets are going to be part of the mix in the playoffs. I know the Los Angeles Kings got Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think their center depth is going to be a lot better. But I just think they're a victim of their division, in my opinion. I think the Pacific is just so strong out there. So I think that's really going to be a little too much for the Kings as far as to handle it as well. So for the playoff bracket, I have Carolina over Buffalo in the first round, New York over New Jersey, Toronto over Pittsburgh, and then Florida over Tampa Bay. But I do believe that the momentum that Toronto could possibly carry as far as bringing in a little bit of sandpaper with Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi as well. I know it's a little bit of a lateral move with John Klingberg, but I think that the Florida Panthers could fall short. There's a possibility of that in round 2 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, but they won't get past the Carolina Hurricanes. Because I think this is their year to make the cup. But Jacob and I have the same Stanley Cup final matchup, but we have a different winner. My Stanley Cup champion is the Dallas Stars this year. It'll be their first cup since the late 90s, after beating the Buffalo Sabres in that Stanley Cup final. When you think of what the Dallas Stars have with Jason Robertson, Joe Pavelski getting in front of the net with deflections, Miro Heiskanen can possibly win a Norris Trophy as well. Adding Matt Duchene to your third line after he got bought out. Rope Hintz as part of the mix as well. The Dallas Stars are deep. Mason Marchment didn't have such a great first year with Dallas, and he's a guy who's a physical player as far as
They'll
that.
have an actual center now. So
yeah,
they finally added some depth to that forward group.
So yeah, I think that the Dallas Stars, and I didn't even mention their goaltender, Jake Ottinger.
Bounce back year for Otter, definitely.
And he's this might be a little crazy to say, but if the NHL were to go back to the Olympics, maybe he's the starter for Team USA. I mean, there's Connor Hellebuck as well. I know that, but there's a chance that Jake Ottinger could be the guy between the pipes if the NHL were to go back to the Olympics as well. So I think the Dallas Stars just have everything in the making to win the Stanley Cup. So that will be my Stanley Cup winner this year, guys. So yeah. Wait, Nick, did you give your Stanley Cup winner?
No, I did not.
Who do you have winning the cup?
Boy.
So who did I pick? I'm trying to remember because there's gonna be a lot of people listening. Like, he didn't put New Jersey in the playoffs. No, I did not. No, I for my Stanley Cup, I do think Edmonton is going to be there. I think this is the year that McDavid and Draisaitl will finally figure it out. Some way, somehow, even though they are basically coming back with the same team. And I do think that they are probably going to go. I think they are probably going to go up against. Who did I have? I had Florida, Detroit, Tampa, Toronto, and then out of the Metro Capitals. I'm going to take a shot in the dark. I'm probably going to say, yeah, because I don't want to do this to myself. I don't think Carolina gets out of the Eastern Conference Final. I think they're perpetually cursed. They haven't won a game since, 2009?
So do you have Edmonton over?
This is going to be crazy, but I'm going to say the New York Rangers. I think they come back better.
Interesting.
Because they don't have that distraction of Patrick Kane. I think they have a good enough group right now, and they have probably the best goaltender in the league that can carry them again. So I will probably say it is going to be Edmonton winning it this year.
And you think about whether the kids, Capo Caco and Alexei Lafreniere, can take that next step as well, which they have been waiting for a few years. You have Blake Wheeler on the cheap as well. You have a number one
defense is young and nasty. That's a really good defense.
Keandre Miller is one of the best skaters in the NHL. Jacob Trouba is one of the hardest hitters in the league. So they got a lot of everything. I was a little down on them when they got eliminated early. because of how Panarin and Zibanejad performed in that series. But will it be 2 years in a row where you'll see those guys be having down postseasons as well? And especially with Artemi Panarin's new look with no salad.
That's really, really weird. It is scary looking, but the shaved head did not turn around Mackenzie Weegar's game in the playoffs. So that's not a guarantee.
Oh God. Was that after the 4 seconds?
That was,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was at that game, and then the very next day he shows up to morning skate with no hair. I was like, really?
That was a mental breakdown, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Right there. You don't do that unless you are.
I just picture him like in the mirror, just crying with a razor. No.
Mackenzie, sorry, bro, but yeah, that was.
I love Weegs. I love him. But that was an interesting.
That was an all-timer.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. but guys, this was a lot of fun. We went very long here as expected. We knew this from the time that we spoke about having this this special preview edition of the Florida Panthers season, answering all types of questions, giving our predictions and all that. And we are just one day away from opening night from the time this drops. So guys, I want to thank you guys so much once again. Before I ask you guys any last words, you can follow Jacob on X at Jacob Winans 8. You can follow Nick online as well at Prudentia0 as well, and you could also follow me as well on X at MondoMan12. So give all three of us a follow, which we'll be talking a lot about the Florida Panthers throughout the season. And Jacob will be back every single Wednesday, and Nick will be back here every single Friday throughout the season as well. We are continuing the Winans Wednesdays and the Fairbanks Fridays here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So any last words, guys, before we sign off here?
The floor is yours, Nick.
Thank you. I was going to give you the last word. Jacob, thank you for sharing your Winans Wednesdays with me and going over the season preview. I'm excited to get another season. It feels really weird with how short this offseason's been. It doesn't even feel like – I don't even feel like we're even in the Stanley Cup final anymore. Like, it's just been that short, and I've been just so out of the hockey mind and not really wanting to let's get back into it. But I think now I'm at that point, like, let's get this thing going. Let's start off well. Let's have a good October. Let's stay healthy. And let's see what November, December brings. And hopefully the team can meld and come together, and we'll have another deep run this season.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have hockey back. We're a little spoiled now. We're Panther fans, so for so many years we're used to those long off seasons, not making the playoffs or getting bounced right away. So having a short off season, you would have liked for it to come with the cup, but I think we now have the advantage of going into this season with a lot of hungry players that want to get back. So I think we should be in for some good hockey. The hockey season doesn't really set in for me every year until I go pick up the new NHL game. Just did that yesterday. So it's hockey time. I'm so excited. Cannot wait for tomorrow. Let's get this thing going.
Let's get this thing going. So thank you guys once again. Jacob, see you next Wednesday. And Nick, see you in a few days to recap Panthers Wild.
Let's do it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On AHL network, including Locked On AHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And every day, make sure you come back for tomorrow's edition of the show. We will be previewing game 1 of 82 of the Florida Panthers between them and the Minnesota Wild. So make sure to come back for tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.